The galaxy was not always broken. Once it burned with brilliance, a living network of civilizations that stretched across 1,000 suns. Empires rose and fell, trade lanes sang with activity, and the promise of endless progress seemed inevitable. But that was before complacency hollowed the stars, before arrogance chained every living race to decline. Now, what remained of that great experiment was a husk, systems stripped bare, cultures exhausted, innovation smothered under the weight of alien misrule. The once vibrant heart of galactic life pulsed weakly, as though waiting for the mercy of death. For centuries, the galaxy had been ruled by alien coalitions, species whose dominance was not earned through vision but seized through convenience. They divided sectors, claimed authority, and fed on the labors of weaker races. Their unity was brittle, forged not in trust but in fear of rivals. They did not build, they harvested. They did not inspire, they commanded. And slowly, inevitably, they dragged every world under their banner into rot. The Cathari, with their vast wingspans and cruelly sharp intellect, demanded tribute from entire sectors, hoarding resources without thought of renewal. The Ulan, aquatic in origin but swollen with decadence, taxed innovation until no species dared dream of progress. The Zirak, once warriors of honor, became mercenaries who sold protection but delivered only coercion. Each species clung to power, yet none had vision beyond survival and control. They called it stability. In truth, it was stagnation. Worlds that once gleamed with progress turned into scavenger pits. Great star yards, once humming with industry, now floated abandoned, their frames rusting in the void. Populations starved not because resources were absent, but because greed and mismanagement had corrupted every channel of distribution. The galaxy was not poor, it was suffocated, and in hushed voices among the oppressed and forgotten a question was whispered: what happened to humanity? Long ago, humanity had shaken the foundations of the stars. They were not the first to rise, nor the most numerous, but they were different. They spread across galaxies like wildfire, restless, unyielding, never content to remain bound by limits. Their ingenuity unsettled allies and terrified rivals. Where others saw boundaries, humans saw frontiers. Where others surrendered to tradition, humans broke the chains and rewrote the rules. The great alien coalitions remembered humanity not with fondness but with fear. For it was humanity that had challenged their authority, humanity that had resisted their decrees, humanity that refused to accept subjugation. In the wars of old, humanity had nearly torn the galaxy apart with their defiance. The aliens claimed victory, driving humanity into exile, erasing their influence from the maps of power. They whispered to their children that the humans were gone forever, scattered to the void, extinguished by their own hubris. But in truth, humanity had never been destroyed. They had left, not in defeat but in defiance. They carried their fleets to the edges of known space, vanishing into dark frontiers, taking with them their stubborn will and unbroken spirit. The galaxy told itself humanity was finished, but the oppressed remembered differently. In stories told in secret, humanity became legend. The race that had said no when all others bent the knee. The species that had fought for freedom, even at the price of annihilation. Now, centuries later, the galaxy reaped the consequences of humanity's absence. Without them, the balance of power had calcified. Alien rulers consumed themselves in cycles of greed. Innovation died. Exploration ceased. A great silence spread across the stars, a silence filled with suffering, with despair, with resignation. On worlds enslaved, children asked why the skies were dark, why their futures were chains. On ruined stations, elders wept at the memory of better times. And still the question lingered: where were the humans? The alien rulers dismissed it as myth. They called humanity reckless, unstable, dangerous. They said their disappearance was proof that their kind had been unfit to endure. But their voices grew weaker as systems fell into disrepair, as more species lost hope, as entire civilizations forgot how to dream. And in that void of faith, whispers began to stir. It started at the farthest edges, where trade lanes had gone dark and pirate fleets prowled unchecked. A convoy of merchants spoke of strange vessels, sharp and disciplined, moving with unity unseen in centuries. Survivors of ambushed raiders swore they had been spared, not destroyed, not enslaved, but disarmed and left adrift with a single message burned into their ship's core. The time of waste is over. At first, no one believed. 1,000 myths haunted the void. What difference was one more? But then came the broadcasts. At first faint, carried on old communication relays long abandoned, then stronger, echoing across systems. A voice, not alien, not machine, but unmistakably human. It said, "You squandered what was given. You ruled and you consumed, and now the galaxy lies in ruin. But we have returned. Humanity endures. Humanity remembers. And we will restore what you allowed to wither." The words spread like fire. To the alien rulers they were blasphemy, a threat reborn from the ashes of history. To the oppressed they were salvation. The myth had become flesh again. The race that had refused to break was back. Alien coalitions dismissed the broadcasts as propaganda. They told themselves humanity could not return. They told themselves no species could endure so long in exile. But beneath their denial ran fear. For they knew what humanity had been, and they knew what the galaxy had become in their absence. If humanity truly returned, it would be a reckoning. The first confirmed sighting shattered denial. A mining colony at the rim, starving under Xerac extortion, reported the arrival of a fleet unlike any seen in living memory. Ships glided with precision, their designs sleek and uncorrupted by ornament. They moved not like scattered raiders, but as a single organism, disciplined, efficient. They dismantled Xerac patrols with terrifying ease, not through overwhelming numbers but through mastery of coordination, precision strikes that left enemies helpless before they knew the battle had begun. And when the battle ended, humanity did not enslave. They rebuilt. They restored power to the colony, delivered food, repaired life support. They left behind not demands but hope, and at the center of it all, a single message. Humanity has returned. The galaxy trembled. They came not as ghosts or rumors, but as a people reborn, their ships gliding across the void with a confidence the galaxy had forgotten. To the oppressed, their arrival was revelation. To the rulers, it was terror wrapped in certainty. Humanity had endured exile and had returned stronger, sharper, bound together by purpose that could not be extinguished. Their presence alone shattered centuries of complacency, for their every movement carried weight, and their silence struck deeper than the loudest decree of alien tyrants. The first fleets revealed themselves not with grand displays of domination, but with efficiency and control. Every vessel carried the marks of discipline, streamlined hulls, no wasted ornament, weapons and shields designed with practical elegance. They were not vast in number, but every engagement proved overwhelming, not through brute strength but through flawless coordination. Humanity had not wasted its exile. They had learned, they had refined, they had transformed into something greater than the galaxy remembered. When the transmissions began, they cut through the noise of every channel, ancient relay, and forgotten beacon. The voice was steady, resonant, and undeniably human. You squandered the galaxy entrusted to you. You chose greed over growth, control over vision, and fear over progress. Your misrule has dragged civilizations into shadow. We have returned not to conquer but to restore. Stand aside or face the consequence of your neglect. The words struck deeper than weapons. The alien coalitions, long decayed by arrogance, bristled with defiance, yet even within their ranks the seeds of doubt sprouted. For centuries, their subjects had heard only demands and decrees. Now, for the first time in generations, they heard a promise not of subjugation but of restoration. Humanity's first contact with the broken galaxy was not war but healing. On ruined worlds, they delivered supplies, power, and knowledge freely. Starving populations saw the impossible. Fleets that fought and won, then left behind stability rather than chains. Abandoned colonies were reconnected, lost technologies restored, medical miracles shared. Humanity returned not as conquerors, but as guardians of possibility. That was what shook the galaxy most of all. Species long bowed under alien taxation lifted their heads again. The oppressed whispered to their children that hope had returned with the humans. Where alien rulers had demanded loyalty through fear, humanity inspired loyalty through respect. The difference was undeniable, and it spread faster than any fleet could travel. But not all welcomed their return. In halls of power, alien rulers convened with urgency. They remembered the old wars, the scars humanity had left on their empires, the way humans had once defied every attempt to control them. They told themselves that the humans had always been reckless, unstable, too dangerous to exist among the stars. They convinced themselves that if humanity was not stopped now, they would soon rise beyond control again. So they prepared. The Zirak promised fleets, the Kethari offered strategy, the Ulan gathered resources. In desperation, rival powers that had spent centuries undermining one another found unity in fear of humanity's return. The memory of their old enemy was strong enough to forge alliances that had been impossible for ages. To them, the choice was clear: resist humanity now or surrender the galaxy forever. Yet even as they schemed, they could not deny what their subjects saw with their own eyes. Humanity restored where others destroyed. Humanity shared where others stole. Humanity rebuilt where others left ruin. Every act of mercy became a weapon sharper than any blade, cutting through the lies of alien rulers and inspiring loyalty where fear had once prevailed. The oppressed began to rally. Entire species long forgotten in the margins of galactic politics pledged themselves to humanity's vision. They offered aid, knowledge, and manpower, not as slaves or conscripts but as willing allies. Humanity accepted, not with chains but with contracts of respect, agreements built on dignity. A coalition unlike any seen before began to form, not of rulers clinging to power, but of peoples desperate for a future worth living. The galaxy had never seen power wielded in this way. Aliens knew only empires built on domination, on wealth extracted by force, on fear maintained by violence. Humanity wielded something else entirely: belief. Belief in progress, in unity, in vision. And belief proved more dangerous than any fleet. Still, humanity did not move blindly. Their leaders, forged in centuries of exile, remembered too well the mistakes of the past. They debated fiercely among themselves. Should they simply rebuild, or should they dismantle the alien powers entirely? Should they trust the galaxy to rise on its own again, or should they impose their own order? These debates raged within humanity's councils, but one principle remained unshaken: they would not become what they once fought against. They had returned with the means to dominate utterly, but domination was not their aim. They sought restoration, renewal, and a galaxy that could dream again. That choice was not weakness. It was strength greater than any alien ruler could comprehend. When humanity finally confronted the alien rulers directly, it was not in secret or shadow but openly, in the light of countless stars. Representatives of the coalitions met the human envoys, and for the first time in centuries, they looked upon their old rivals face to face. The humans bore no ornament, no flamboyance. They carried themselves with quiet resolve, their eyes unflinching. Where alien voices trembled with arrogance masking fear, the human voice was steady, offering a simple truth: we are not here to enslave. We are here because you have failed. The words were daggers. In private, alien rulers raged. To admit failure was to admit weakness, and weakness was the death of power. Yet they could not deny the truth. Their empires were crumbling. Their subjects no longer feared them. And everywhere humanity went, hope followed like fire in dry grass. The choice for the rulers was clear. They would fight, even if it meant tearing the galaxy apart again. Better to risk destruction than surrender control. So the declaration was made. The coalitions announced that humanity was a threat to galactic order, a rogue species bent on destabilization. They called upon every loyal fleet, every weapon, every ally to prepare for war. But as they prepared, they did not see what was already slipping from their grasp. Their subjects no longer rallied to their banners. Their fleets marched to war out of obligation, not loyalty, and many secretly carried the dream of humanity in their hearts. The galaxy had shifted, humanity had returned, and nothing could ever be the same again. The galaxy had not seen war on this scale in centuries. The alien coalitions, driven by fear and desperation, gathered fleets from every corner of their dominions. Massive armadas, patched together from crumbling empires, filled the void with ships that had not seen true battle in generations. They proclaimed themselves the guardians of stability, declaring humanity a reckless threat to order, a danger that must be eliminated before their vision of restoration spread further. But beneath the banners of unity, cracks were already visible. Their fleets were vast but undisciplined, their commanders bloated with arrogance, their soldiers weary of serving masters who had long since ceased to inspire. Humanity, by contrast, did not march to war with numbers alone. They marched with purpose. Every ship was a blade honed to perfection, every strategy designed not merely to crush, but to dismantle the illusion of alien supremacy. They did not seek conquest for conquest's sake. They sought to prove that the galaxy's future could not be entrusted to those who had squandered it. Their leaders knew the stakes. If humanity faltered, the dream of renewal would die, and the galaxy would sink deeper into decay than ever before. The first clashes came at the border worlds, where alien fleets advanced with overwhelming numbers, expecting quick victories. Instead, they met precision. Humanity's fleets struck like lightning, small squadrons weaving through enemy formations, exploiting weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. Alien commanders who relied on intimidation and brute force found themselves outmaneuvered, their massive ships reduced to burning wrecks before they could bring their full power to bear. The message was clear. Humanity had returned not only stronger but wiser. Yet war was never fought in battles alone. Where humanity advanced, they liberated. On every world reclaimed from alien rule, they restored infrastructure, distributed resources, and offered hope. They did not demand loyalty, they inspired it. Populations long enslaved rose in open rebellion, sabotaging alien supply lines, guiding human fleets through secret routes, standing as allies rather than subjects. Humanity did not merely fight against the coalitions, they awakened the galaxy itself. The alien rulers could not understand this power. They saw loyalty as something purchased or enforced. They had forgotten that true allegiance could be earned through respect and vision. As their fleets faltered, they lashed out with cruelty, burning rebellious worlds, punishing populations who dared look to humanity with hope. But every act of brutality only strengthened the humans' cause, for the oppressed no longer feared death as much as they feared chains. In the heart of humanity's strategy lay not only weapons but ideas. They broadcast across the stars, not threats but promises. They spoke of a galaxy where progress would no longer be strangled by greed, where unity would mean cooperation rather than submission. They spoke of justice, of dignity, of renewal, and species who had long given up dreaming began to believe again. The turning point came not in a single battle, but in countless acts of defiance that spread like wildfire. Entire alien crews abandoned their rulers and defected to humanity's side. Planets declared independence and invited human envoys to help rebuild. Fleets once sworn to defend the coalitions fractured as officers refused to slaughter innocents any longer. The Great War that was meant to crush humanity became the crucible in which their vision spread beyond their reach. Still, the coalitions did not surrender. Pride and fear bound them to resistance. They threw everything they had into the war, summoning ancient war machines, unleashing weapons of devastation forgotten in vaults of ruin. Yet even their most terrible arsenals proved hollow against humanity's resolve. Where devastation struck, humans rebuilt. Where millions perished, they honored the fallen and pressed forward. The coalitions fought to preserve their power. Humanity fought for the future itself. That difference was unbridgeable. In the final campaigns, humanity drove their fleets into the heart of enemy space. They did not lay waste indiscriminately. They struck with precision, dismantling the command structures that had propped up centuries of corruption. One by one, the symbols of alien dominion crumbled. The Zirak warlords fell to betrayal from within, their mercenaries turning on them in exchange for humanity's promise of freedom. The Ulan collapsed under revolts from their own starving populations, who seized their glittering palaces and declared allegiance to a new order. The Cathari, proud and cunning, resisted to the bitter end, but even their vast intellect could not withstand the relentless tide of change. The fall of the coalition was not marked by a single decisive blow, but by the slow realization that they no longer commanded the galaxy. Their fleets shattered, their subjects abandoned them, their power dissolved. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy looked not to alien rulers but to humanity. Humanity, however, did not claim an empire. They stood before the galaxy not as conquerors demanding submission, but as stewards offering guidance. They called for a council of worlds, a gathering not of rulers clinging to power, but of peoples ready to build anew. They offered technology, knowledge, and protection, but also insisted that every species hold responsibility for the future. They did not seek dominion, they sought partnership. This choice, more than their victories in battle, sealed humanity's triumph. For in choosing to share power rather than hoard it, they shattered the old model of rule that had chained the galaxy for centuries. They proved that strength need not corrupt, that vision need not enslave, that restoration could be more enduring than conquest. And so, when the war ended, the galaxy did not fall into chaos. It breathed again. Victory had remade the galaxy, but peace was never a passive state. The fall of the coalitions ended an age of decay, yet the work of renewal had only begun. Humanity had won not merely because they were stronger, but because they carried a vision greater than fear. Now that vision was tested in the long, quiet work of building a new order. War had been brutal, but it was simple. Peace was complex, fragile, and demanding. Across liberated worlds, the scars of centuries remained. Civilizations long strangled by alien rulers had lost not only infrastructure but identity. Entire cultures had been reduced to survival, stripped of ambition, bound by generations of despair. Humanity's greatest challenge was not rebuilding machines or cities, but reigniting the spark of imagination in countless peoples who no longer remembered how to dream. They did not dictate from thrones. Instead, they traveled, their envoys and teachers spreading knowledge where weapons had once been. They shared methods of governance that balanced responsibility and freedom, systems designed to empower rather than enslave. They rebuilt schools where ignorance had festered, industries where stagnation had taken root, and communities where division had been law. For humanity understood a truth the coalitions never could. Power imposed from above breeds resentment, but power shared breeds strength. Yet even as they spread their vision, shadows lingered. Not all alien rulers had been destroyed. Remnants of the old order hid in the void, nursing grudges, plotting revenge. Pirate lords, mercenary captains, and fallen warlords gathered fragments of fleets, hoping to exploit chaos. To them, humanity was an obstacle, not a savior. They whispered that the humans were hypocrites, conquerors dressed in noble words, manipulators hiding ambition beneath promises. These whispers found ears, for not every species welcomed humanity's leadership. Some feared exchanging one master for another. Humanity did not silence these voices with fire. Instead, they answered with patience. They opened councils to dissenters, listened to grievances, and allowed criticism to breathe. They knew that forcing loyalty would only birth rebellion. Still, patience did not mean weakness. When pirate fleets raided helpless colonies, humanity struck with surgical precision, dismantling threats while preserving lives. They proved that mercy and strength could walk hand in hand, and slowly the galaxy learned that their promises were not masks. But humanity was not immune to doubt. Among themselves, debates raged. Some argued that they should seize direct control, build a unified empire with humanity at its center to prevent the galaxy from fracturing again. Others countered that true strength lay in restraint, that if humanity became what they had once resisted, their victory would be hollow. These debates echoed through every council and ship, but they never tore humanity apart. For exile had taught them unity, and they knew that diversity of thought was not weakness but resilience. It was during this fragile peace that humanity's gaze began to shift outward. For though they had restored the galaxy, they knew it was not the whole of creation. Beyond the stars lay uncharted voids, regions untouched even by alien greed, mysteries older than empires. Whispers came from explorers who had pushed too far, stories of signals not born of any known species, ruins drifting in the dark, shadows of civilizations long vanished. Humanity had returned to restore the galaxy, but now the question arose. Had they returned only for this, or was their destiny greater still? For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was united not in fear but in curiosity. Inspired by humanity's resilience, species began to dream again of exploration, of discovery, of reaching beyond the familiar. Humanity encouraged it, not hoarding the stars for themselves, but inviting others to join. Together, they built expeditions into the unknown, fleets not of conquest but of curiosity. And though dangers lay ahead, the spirit that drove humanity from their cradle through exile and into triumph now ignited an entire galaxy. The old order was gone. The chains of stagnation lay broken. Humanity had proven not only that they could endure, but that they could lead without enslaving, inspire without conquering, guide without dominating. They had restored what was lost, and yet in their hearts they knew restoration was not the end. It was only the beginning.